Hello, welcome back. My name is Gigi. Like literally every other person on planet Earth, I can't not believe that it is actually a new year, but here we are. So I like to do these types of goals at the beginning of the year just to kind of keep myself accountable for books that I have been meaning to read for quite some time or that have been on my radar for a while, and for whatever reason I haven't gotten to them. So I like to write them all down to see how many I can get through within the next year. I don't always follow through. I quite frankly most of the time don't follow through with the entire list. I get a couple of them in, but definitely not the whole thing. But that's okay because they're called goals, not requirements. I do have quite a few on my list, so I won't go into too much detail on what each book is about. Not only that, but I also don't like to know too much about a book before I go into them. Some of the ones that I'm going to mention are pretty popular online, so I do have an idea on what they may or may not be about, but I don't go out of my way to read summaries. I kind of just go in and figure it out as I go. So if I don't say much about these books, that's kind of on purpose because I probably don't know either. So in no particular order, first book in my 2024 TBR is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. This one is not one that I've heard too much about, but the very few people that I've heard mention this book talk about how much it absolutely destroyed them. I don't know much about the plot. I think it's somewhat of a love story, maybe, and I believe it's set in Syria, and there might be some type of war, civil unrest that is causing our main characters to not be able to actually be together. I could absolutely be butchering that. If you have read the book and you're thinking that's not correct at all, please remember I don't read summaries. I kind of just go in. But it sounds like it's going to be very beautiful, incredibly sad, and is going to tear my heart out, and I am so excited for that. The second book that I need to read this year, because it is ridiculous how long I've been putting it off. It has been sitting on my shelf for literal years now. It's actually a series, and that is The Poppy War. I have heard nothing but wonderful, amazing, stellar 5 stars from everybody that has picked up this book. And the only reason why I haven't read it, it's not even because, I don't know, I wouldn't be able to tell you why I haven't read it. I think it's because I'm intimidated, not because they're lengthy books, which they kind of are, but because I've heard so many wonderful things and how much of a beautiful, devastating story it is. And I don't think I was ready for that kind of emotional damage at the time of when I bought these books. So they've been sitting on my shelves ever since. Every now and then I see a video of them online. Someone brings them up and talks about how it was the best thing they've ever read and how they were crushed and destroyed and nothing will ever be the same. And so I'm making it a point to finally get to it this year. I think out of all the books on this list, this is the one that I really am holding myself accountable for, and that is why I'm mentioning it here. This will be the year that I read The Poppy War. Along with that, I guess I could say I just want to read R.F Kuang in general. I've never read any books by her whatsoever. I own Babel, I just have not read it. I'm not sure if I want to put it on this list because I don't know if I want to hold myself to that as well. So I'm going to start with The Poppy War first, but I have a feeling that if I end up loving it as much as I think I will probably end up devouring the rest of her books. I believe this series is set in China in the middle of a war, and our main character fights. That is all I got and all I want to know. The next is a book that not only have I read, but it's actually one of my favorite ones of all time. However, it has been quite a number of years since I've last read this, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I'm sure you are probably familiar with this book. It is a classic after all. I read this book for the first time in high school for some either creative or AP class. I don't know. I remember loving it. And I'm not one to often revisit classics. I do love a classical novel, and I have reread many, and I do have all-time favorites, but I never really feel the need to revisit them again. They're kind of like a one and done, except for this one. I would love to revisit it and hopefully fall in love with it again. This one I genuinely cannot wait to read, and I'm so excited for it. Like The Poppy War, I have put this book off for too long. It has been sitting on my shelves for too long, and this is one of the few ones on this list that I dare say am 100% sure I will end up loving and will probably make my best books of 2024 list, and that is none other than Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is a book that I have heard absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing but praises for. I believe this novel is kind of dystopian, maybe futuristic. I have no idea. Again, please do not take my word for these summaries. I am simply just tapping into the corners of my mind trying to remember what everyone else has said about these books. I am absolutely certain that I'm butchering it, but the bottom line is Parable of the Sower is a book that I have been meaning to read for a very, very long time now, and I'm putting it on here because I'm holding myself accountable. 2024 will be the year that I read it. Next, I really want to read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I've never read anything by T. Kingfisher at all. This is, I think, the only book on this list that I genuinely know nothing about. Like, at all. I'm really excited to get into T. Kingfisher this year. I have been hearing a lot about this author for quite a few years now, but last year in 2023 in particular was when it seemed like everybody that I knew was reading something by them. Again, like the majority of these authors on this list, I have heard nothing, and I mean nothing but good things about T. Kingfisher. So I'm very excited to get to their books. Next one is a book that is kind of in the same boat as The Picture of Dorian Gray, because I have actually read some parts of this series before, and that is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I actually started this book back in 2022, but I think I picked it up at a time where I was not ready for it. No fault to the story itself, because I was having a good time. I was kind of in a reading slump, so it was taking a little bit more brain power from me than I actually wanted to. So I put it down, meaning to read other books and then come back to it, but I never did. And I think I got maybe 2/4 of the way into the first book. But this year I really would like to finish it. I do remember having a good time with the very little of it that I read, and I know for a fact that if I give it another chance and I finish it all the way through, it could potentially become one of my favorite series of all time. I do remember what little of it I read, not enough to describe it, because again, I just was not in the right headspace while I was reading it, so I couldn't really grasp a useful understanding of the world. But from what I remember, this story is set in London, in multiple Londons actually. The magic system in this universe is kind of based on colors, and there are different parallel universe Londons that are right on top of one another, and each of them are color coded and they are completely isolated from one another. So the people in red London do not interact or ever see or ever go to what was the other one? White London. But except for a main character who has the power to travel between the different Londons. And if I remember correctly, I think he's some sort of like royal correspondent. Like I said, I was liking it. I picked it up at a bad time. Another really popular read that has been on my radar for a very long time and has had many good reviews from reviewers that I trust is Strange to Dreamer. There was a point where I remember downloading this book on my iPad, and then for some reason I just never got to it. I just never read it, but I do wish to get to it this year. This is another one that I have absolutely no idea what it is about, like not a single thing. And I think it might be one of those stories where it's kind of like a book within a book type of deal. Not sure. Again, I know absolutely nothing about the story at all whatsoever, but I am very excited to read it. A lot of people whose opinion I trust speak very highly of these books. Another book that I would like to get to this year, or I guess I should say author in general, but I'm gonna start myself off with just this book, and that is none other than Normal People by Sally Rooney. I have never read anything written by Sally Rooney. I know that she is immensely popular in the book world, and I know that she's also quite the polarizing author. I think a lot of people either love, and I mean love, everything that she writes, or absolutely hate it. So I'm really curious of where in that I'm gonna fall. I want to read Normal People because it's one of her most highly praised novels. It was turned into a show that people also really love, so I'm excited to read the book, watch the show, and kind of have that experience as well. What do I know about this book? I do know quite a lot, actually. I'm pretty sure this is it's about two people, and I believe it's somewhat of a maybe love story. Two high school students, and I think the guy is really popular and the girl is not, and I think they're both secretly in love with each other, but the other one doesn't know. I don't know. But everyone describes not only this book, but anything by Sally Rooney as some of the best things you'll ever read. And depending on where I fall in the Sally Rooney love or hate train, I might just pick up more of her books throughout the year. I personally don't read a lot of contemporary or contemporary romance. Nothing wrong with it. It's just simply not what I normally gravitate towards. However, I am so excited, and I'm genuinely looking forward to reading A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This one, I know I've said this for a lot of the books on this list, but this one genuinely I have heard nothing but stellar reviews for. I'm talking about people say that this is some of the best romance that they've read in a while. People love the found family aspect in this book. People love the writing. People love the banter, the relationship between the two main characters, and the build up and the relationship afterwards when they get together. And it sounds like everything that I should love. I have really high hopes for this one. I really do think that I'm gonna like it. I am also pretty sure that this author has another book coming out in 2024, and I do want to get to Secret Society of Irregular Witches before I get to that second one. And as far as I know, I believe this is a story about witches, duh, but they keep their identities a secret. Our main character is hired to go to this house and teach these young witches how to be witches. Teach them magic, I should say. And there is where our main character meets our main male character, cute, grumpy librarian. It sounds like it has everything that I love in a book. Next is a book that I've actually been actively putting off for a very long time, and I have no reason for not picking up this book at all. I just simply have not been emotionally ready to, and I don't think I'll ever will, so I might as well just do it now and rip the band-aid off. But that is My Dark Vanessa. I have reached a point in my life where curiosity is killing the cat. I am gonna bite the bullet and make it a point to read it this year. I do think I know quite a lot about this book just because it's been talked about online so much. And I mean, if you are in the book side of the internet, I'm sure you have heard about this book. I have been wanting to read this for a while, but like I said, I've been putting it off simply because of the very dark and triggering themes that are discussed. But people say that not only is it obviously sad and incredibly heartbreaking, but also a lot of people praise its writing and the way that the author handles the very heavy themes that are present throughout the story. So I'm really excited to read it for those reasons. Last but certainly not least is not only a book but also an author that I have been meaning to get into for also years now. I really do think that 2024 is his year. He's huge, and it's to the point where you can't call yourself a lover of fantasy novels if you have not read his books. Brandon Sanderson. More specifically for me, this year I would like to read Tress of the Emerald Tree. I know that Sanderson books can be very intimidating, and I have heard from multiple sources that if you are looking to get into Sanderson books, this is the best introduction of all. I did for a second wanted to read Mistborn first, just because I believe it is one of his most famous series. But again, I have been told multiple times that if you've never read anything by Brandon Sanderson, the best way to get into his books, if you want just like a light introduction and not be thrown into a very elaborate and very political heavy fantasy world, I will be a good listener and I will be doing that. This is another one of the books on this list that I know absolutely nothing about. I do have a feeling that, like literally everyone else, I'm going to really enjoy Sanderson books. I am very excited to open up my fantasy world to a new author. But there you have it. These are my 2024 reading goals. I am not promising to get to all of these, and I'm saying this to you and also to myself as well, because I do tend to be a little hard on myself at the end of the year when I've made these lists and I don't actually get to all of them. Sorry if I didn't sell or advertise the books to you properly, given that I did not give a proper summary for any of these books. I personally am the type of reader that likes to go into books knowing as little as possible if nothing at all. It's kind of what works for me. It makes reading all the more fun when I figure things out as I go. However, if you yourself are curious about any of these books and you would like to look them up yourself, I will link them down in the description so you can look up much better descriptions than the ones I've given you. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Gigi.